Man, I ain't had one of these in a while. I still love these though. Game Fuel. Charged Cherry Burst, bro. These motherfuckers still taste like a damn slush puppy. Hey, like I said in yesterday's review, just a little too early for me to be drinking some alcohol, you know what I'm saying? So we gonna stick with the Game Fuel. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to ADiktion TV. I hope everybody is having a good morning so far. Hey, you want to talk about a rushed sequel that was successful? We're gonna go ahead and talk about Scream 2 today. This will be my spoiler-filled review for Scream 2 1997. And before we get into the video, if you haven't already, go down, grab the like button, and hit the subscribe button. That will be dope as hell, my friend. I'm gonna need another drink. So Scream 2 came out really fast after the first film. Literally just a year later. And it was like 6 months after the release of the first film that Scream 2 went into production. And I'd say it didn't fail because Kevin Williamson, the writer of Scream, he already had a plan for a sequel. So, you know, it wasn't like they didn't know what they were doing. It wasn't like the Scream 3, which we will talk about later on today. So in Scream 2, we start off with two college students named Maureen and Phil. And they're going to see an early screening of a movie called Stab, which is based off Gale Weathers' book, The Woodsboro Murders, you know, which is based off the first Scream film, the events in the first movie. And it's funny that at the movie theater, they're giving out all these Ghostface costumes. And it's like, well, first of all, that's a horrible idea. But it's funny. Omar Epps and Jada Pinkett Smith, they play this couple. And they're talking about how horror films exclude black people a lot. And I thought it was hilarious, you know. She wants to go down the street and see Sandra Bullock. Omar Epps wants to watch Stab, and it's like, oh man. And they're arguing. She's like, oh, you'll sit through a movie called Stab, but you won't sit through a movie with Sandra Bullock. He's like, man, I ain't trying to watch no Sandra Bullock shit. But anyways, okay. Jokes all aside, they go into the theater. And they get a Ghostface costume as well. The theater is filled up like Call of Duty's Warzone lobby when Ghostface was on there. People are acting like they're not even in a movie. They're acting like they're at a concert or something. But it was cool, man. I've been to some hyped-ass theaters as well. Maybe not that hype. Like, that was like an Avengers type event right there. But, and they had like ghost faces flying from the ceiling and shit. So, they sit down, take their seats. People are still going wild, and the movie starts. And she decides she wants some popcorn. She goes and gets some popcorn. She comes back, and her boyfriend pops up with the Ghostface mask on. Scares the shit out of her. He's like, I gotta take a piss. So he goes to the bathroom, right? Alright. And he's taking his piss. There's two dudes dressed as Ghostface at the urinals. I don't know how they're pissing out of that robe, but there's two dudes pissing. Anyways, so he goes into the stall and he hears some weird noises while he's pissing in the stall next to him. And it's like he's giggling and shit, and he puts his ear up to the stall, and then swing, Ghostface comes in, stabs him in the ear. And I mean, it's kind of cheesy. Like, Ghostface would know exactly where his head is at. Like, the motherfucker can see through it. But hey, I still like the kill. It still entertained me. So he takes his jacket, goes back into the movie theater, sits down next to Jada Pinkett Smith, and she's all just like, baby, give it up. And, you know, they're watching Stab. She's like, looks like she's about to get it. But if she only knew, she's about to get it. So Ghostface, she gets blood on her hands off of the jacket Ghostface is wearing. And he pulls his knife out, stabs her right in the gut. And he just starts stabbing the shit out of her in this movie theater. He's killing her. And all these other people are like watching and cheering. It's actually kind of an emotional opening. It's kind of sad, kind of like in the first Scream. That was an intense opening. I think the first Scream and Scream 2 definitely have the best openings and the most emotional openings. So all the rest of the crowd thinks this is a publicity stunt. So she goes up in front of the movie screen, and she screams. She's bleeding, and she falls down to her death. And it kind of like warned everybody, like, hey, there's a killer in here. And then whoop, title card drops, Scream 2, and I thought it was pretty damn intense, and I enjoyed it. So now we catch up with our final girl, Sydney Prescott, who is now in college. And she's living in college, her college dorm, with a girl named Hallie. And someone calls Sydney in the Ghostface voice. Well, they got caller ID now. And she finds out who it is, calls him out, and he's like, shit! And they turn on the news, and they see about these murders. And the first thought that comes to Sydney's head is to go and talk to Randy. You know, Randy is the expert when it comes to horror films, or films in general, and when it comes to how to survive a horror film. So then we cut to Randy in his film class. So Randy is in his class, and he's kind of having a debate with another student named Mickey and CC Cooper and a couple other people, and they're talking about someone's trying to make a real life sequel to the events of what happened in the original Scream movie. And they're like arguing about sequels surpassing the original, and you know, they name some like Godfather Part 2, T2, you know what I'm saying? And so class ends, Randy's walking with Sydney, and she's like, it's happening again. And Randy's like, no, it's not. You know, a lot of shit happens at the movie theater, and you know, people get murdered and shot, stabbed, you know. He's naming all this shit, and then we meet Sydney's new boyfriend, Derek. Which kind of surprised me that she would trust another man after what happened in Scream. But there's news reporters everywhere, people talking about all this shit going on, and who's there? Gale Weathers. Gale Weathers is there, and so is Cotton Weary, the guy who Sydney accused of murdering her mother in the original film. Okay? And, you know, Cotton, he wants his 15 minutes of fame. And he wants to let the world know, you know, I was an innocent man, I'm a good person. So he's like pressuring Sydney to do an interview with Diane Sawyer, and Gales brings Cotton over to Sydney, and Gale's running her chops like she does. So she gets punched in the face again. So, who else shows up? None other than Dewey Riley shows up on the college campus, okay? And it's always great to see Dewey, but what cracked me up about Dewey in Scream 2 was his little theme song every time he came on screen. Doom, 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 doom. I just thought it was kind of goofy and funny, and that's what's so great about the Scream films is they're scary, but they rely a lot on comedy, and I love that. And one thing I like about Ghostface is where he's not supernatural, he gets his ass beat. He's always falling over chairs, or he's tripping over something, and I think that's hilarious. So then we catch up with a student named CC Cooper, played by Sarah Michelle Gellar, at home in the Beta House or whatever, the fraternity house, whatever you want to call it. Okay, and she's there and everybody else is at a party. She's at the Omega Beta Zeta house and everybody else is at a party at another frat house. And Ghostface gives her a call, and she thinks it's her boyfriend Ted, and she's all like, Ted, are you drunk? And Ghostface is like, who's Ted? And so they're having a little conversation, and she's finally like, look, I don't know who you're calling for, but do you want to leave a message for somebody? And he's just like, do you want to die tonight, Cece? And I'm like, uh-oh, he's back, let's go. So she's walking around creeped out. She tries to call the campus security, and she can't get through because she's outside. She's freaking out. She's hearing noises inside. And Ghostface calls back, and he's talking to the roommate, and he's like, it's Ted. And you can see Ghostface in the background coming in the house. I really like that shot. I thought it was cool. So she's like, hello, Ted. And he's like, you wish it was Ted. And I'm like, yes, hey, building up the suspense, man. So she hangs up. She's walking around. Phone rings again. When she answers it, Ghostface pops up out of the closet behind her, chases her up the stairs, and she pushes a bike at him like that's going to do something. But he grabs her, throws her out onto the balcony, through the glass door, stabs her twice at the back, and then picks her up and tosses her off the balcony. And I'm just like, oh man, That's a good kill, but I just like the music right there. Never said I was innocent. And then it leads into the party. We're also introduced to, earlier in the film, we're also introduced to another news reporter that's kind of like in competition with Gale, named Debbie Salt. And we're also introduced to Gale Weathers' cameraman, whose name is Joel. And we'll talk more about them later. But now we're at the frat party, okay? Sydney's at the party. Her boyfriend Derek's at the party. Hallie's at the party. Mickey's at the party. And everyone finds out something happened at the Omega Beta Zeta house. So everyone's running over there to see what happened. And so that leaves Sydney by herself at where the party was happening in this house. And the phone rings. And she answers it. And who is it? It's the killer. Hello, Sydney. Or I can't remember exactly what he said. He said something, hello, Sydney. It's showtime, or something like that. And she says, well, why don't you show your face, you fucking coward? And he pops up like, my pleasure. And I'm like, oh shit, he's talking in the voice box without the phone. I like hearing Ghostface talk in person. But he's chasing Sydney. Derek can't get in the house. And he damn near stabs Derek in the head. Derek's trying to get in the door. And Ghostface goes to stab Sydney, and the knife goes through the door and like passes Derek's face. He's just like, whoa. And so Ghostface is chasing Sydney around. And like I said, he's clumsy as hell. The motherfucker's tripping over chairs and shit. He or she. We'll talk about that later. But yeah, Ghostface is... Derek finally gets in the house, and he's chasing after Ghostface, right? Alright. Dewey pops up out of nowhere. You know what I'm saying? Creeping around. He pops up. He goes in the house to chase down the killer. And he comes through this door. He finds Derek on the floor with slices in his arms. And, you know, Dewey finds him a little suspicious because it missed like every major artery in his arm. So Sydney's just trying to, you know, get through school. Now she's got to deal with the killer. She's got police following her around to make sure she's safe the whole time. And she's in a library. And she's on the computer. And the killer starts typing to her. And then out of nowhere, Cotton Weary shows up. And he's talking to Sydney about doing some Diane Sawyer interview. And she doesn't want to do it. And he's getting a little irritated. So he starts to raise his voice. And the cops arrest him. And he's like, I'm not a killer. I'm an innocent man. And if you got me definitely for raising my voice in a public library. But other than that, I'm an innocent man. So they can't hold him. They don't have nothing on him. They let him go. So, you know, they're kind of pointing, like in the first film, they're kind of making a lot of these characters suspicious. So then we catch up with Dewey and Randy, and they're talking horror rules. They're talking rules. And, you know, it's a sequel. So Randy's like, this one means more death, more blood, more gore. And they're trying to narrow down who the killer could be. And he's like, what about Hallie? And Dewey's like, well, serial killers are usually typically white males. And Randy's like, well, there's always room for Candyman's daughter. And I'm just like, he took it there. But they keep naming off people, and Randy's like, what about Gale? And Dewey's like, Gale's not a killer, you know. And Randy's like, well, just because you're sweet on her and this and that shit. And he's like, what about Mickey, the freaky film student? And Randy's like, but if he's a suspect, so am I, so let's move on. And Dewey's like, wait, let's not move on. Maybe you are a suspect. And Randy's like, well, if I'm a suspect, you're a suspect. And Dewey's like, good point. Okay, let's move on. So now we catch up with Gale, Dewey, Randy, and her cameraman all sitting around on the campus talking about how to find the killer. Who could the killer be? Gale's phone rings, and it's the killer. So they give the phone to Randy, and they're running around the campus talking to, like, trying to find out who the killer is, running up to all kinds of different people who's on a cell phone, while Randy keeps the killer busy. And this leads up to one of the saddest deaths for me, man. I loved Randy as a character. And Ghostface is hiding in Gale's van, and he yanks Randy into the van and stabs the shit out of him. And I'm like, what? No! How you gonna kill off Randy? I was just like, bruh, you did not just kill off Randy. I was like, what the hell, man? That's some bullshit. So we still, okay, so Randy dies, and we still got Debbie Salt running around she's over there trying to be in competition with Gale Weathers, and Gale's getting annoyed by it. And they find out that they might have caught the killer on tape. So they go back to the editing room, and they're watching footage that Gale's cameraman has been shot. And by the way, Gale's cameraman, he got the fuck out of there. He's like, look, I'm done. He's like, your last cameraman, I read Heel Book, he got gutted. She's like, I made that up. He wasn't gutted. His throat was slashed. And and the camera guy's like, gutted, slashed, the guy ain't in the union no more. So he dips. Alright. So Gale and Dewey are trying to watch footage. And then Ghostface pops up with his own footage, and he chases Gale around, chases Dewey around. Dewey falls down these stairs. Dewey's always falling over shit. So Ghostface is chasing Gale around, and she goes into like this sound room, or where they keep all the film and shit, and there's this big window. And Dewey can see her, but she can't hear Dewey knocking on the glass and saying shit. And Ghostface comes up behind Dewey, starts stabbing the shit out of him, kicks his ass, slams him up against the glass, and Dewey is dying right there in front of Gale. And it was kind of sad, you know what I'm saying? I was like, damn, man, not Dewey, man. Oh, and I forgot to mention that Sidney's boyfriend, Derek, gave his letters to Sidney. So his frat brothers end up kidnapping him, and they got him hanging on this thing at the theater and shit, and he's probably wasted. They're pouring drinks in his mouth. Everyone's drinking out of beer bongs. So everyone's getting wasted. Alright, so we move on. Party ends. The police are taking Sidney and Hallie somewhere to be safe. And they stop at a red light. And out of nowhere, Ghostface pops up, slashes the throat of the cop that's driving. The other cop gets out. Ghostface jumps on top of the car, kicks him in the face. Ghostface gets behind the wheel, runs over the other cop. The cop lands on the windshield, and they hit this construction shit, and a pipe goes straight through the cop's head, and it's like, damn. So Ghostface, he's out cold from the crash. Maybe he was out cold. He could have just been fucking with Sidney and Hallie. So Sidney and Hallie, they crawl across Ghostface to get out the window of the driver's side because they couldn't get out in the back. And man, that was nerve-wracking. The suspense, I'm like, oh man, is he gonna wake up? Is this gonna be the end of Sidney? So they manage to get out. They start running off, and Sidney's like, I'm tired of running. I want to know who it is. So she goes back to the car to unmask the killer. He's gone. Killer pops up behind Hallie and starts stabbing her. Sidney's watching, and Sidney runs off, and poor Hallie, now she's dead. So the body count's getting higher. So Sidney runs back to the theater, and she finds her boyfriend, Derek, hanging there in the theater with his mouth taped up and all kinds of shit. He's wasted, and she's talking to him. She's like, the killer, he's here. He's like, where? And then you hear Ghostface, right here. You're fast, Sid. And I just love seeing Ghostface talk in person. Like, I love that shit. We don't get much of it, but I really like it. And he's like, I wouldn't do that if I were you. When she's trying to untie Derek, and he's like, you really want to trust your boyfriend? And then the voice switches to, don't you know history repeats itself? And it's Mickey. Mickey takes the mask off. Mickey is the killer. And they're like, what the fuck? You know what I mean? He starts messing with Sidney's head to make her think Derek was his partner. He's like, come on, Sid. I gotta have a partner. And he looks at Derek and he's like, you think Sidney's experiencing some deja vu? Derek gets upset, starts yelling at Mickey, and Mickey shoots him right in the heart. And I'm like, oh man. Bye-bye, Derek. Like, life with Derek no more, you know what I'm saying? I'm like, damn. So Mickey and Sidney, they're fighting, and he's talking about being how he's gonna blame the movies. He's like, it's never been done before, Sid. I'm gonna blame the movies, you know, for why he's a killer, why he's psychotic. And he's like, but I do have a partner. And who comes, he's like, who's behind door number, or whatever. I don't remember exactly what he said. But he's like, is that our special guest waiting in the wings? Gale Weathers walks out, and Sidney's like, Gale. And Gale's like, no, no. And Debbie Salt walks in behind Gale. Turns out to be Billy's mother, Mrs. Loomis. She was Mickey's partner. Her and Mickey were the killers. And I was like, oh shit. I knew something was off about that Debbie Salt woman, but I didn't expect her to be Billy's mom. You know what I'm saying? Maybe if I'd have seen it when I was an adult, you know, then I would have suspected it. But like I said, first time I've seen all these movies is when they first come out, because I'm such a huge fan. Mrs. Loomis and Mickey actually met each other on a psychopath website. And they came up with this whole plan and tracking Sidney down. And, you know, Mrs. Loomis blames Sidney for killing her son, which, you know, she did. But her son was fucking psychotic. Anyways, so Mrs. Loomis ends up killing Mickey. Like, oh, there ain't gonna be no trial. She shoots Mickey dead. And, you know, she's having a showdown with Sidney. And by the way, Mickey, when he got shot, he shot Gale in the side. And she fell off the stage and shit. And, Mrs. Loomis and Sidney are battling it out. And it was pretty entertaining to watch, Mrs. Loomis chase Sidney around this theater. Okay? So she gets the upper hand. Mrs. Loomis gets the upper hand. And Cotton Weary pops up with a pistol. And he's all like, don't you fucking move, and la-da-da-da. And, you know, Mrs. Loomis is holding a knife to Sidney's throat. And Cotton is holding both Sidney and Mrs. Loomis at gunpoint. And I like how Cotton kind of like tricked, if you will, Mrs. Loomis right here. And she's like, come on, Cotton, let me kill her, and la-da-da-da. And she's making all these points that could cause Cotton to kill Sidney. And she's like, she sent you to jail for a year. And Cotton's like, well, quite the predicament you're in now, aren't you, Sid? And he shoots Mrs. Loomis. I think he hit her right in the neck. I could have swore I seen like a bullet hole in the neck. But, Sidney gets the gun from Cotton, and Cotton's like, I just want you to know I'd never do anything to hurt you. And they pull Gale up on the stage. She's shot, but she's okay. It's Gale. And Cotton actually makes a joke. He's like, damn, Gale, you got more lives than a cat, which I thought was funny. And, you know, of course, they're like, killer always comes back, don't they? So Mickey pops up like, and Gale and Sidney are shooting the hell out of Mickey. He finally dies. Cotton's like, whoa! And then they shoot Mrs. Loomis in the head, you know. They got to do that final tap. By the way, sorry if you guys can hear my dog barking. Somebody must be walking up the street, you know what I'm saying? Gale, Sidney, and Cotton, they walk out of the theater. There's press everywhere. And Sidney don't want to deal with the press, you know, so she's like, go talk to Cotton. He's the real hero. And they swarm Cotton, and, you know, he's getting his little 15 minutes of fame. And Gale's cameraman actually comes back, and they start rolling to do a report. And then all of a sudden, the paramedics are like, we got a live one here, and they're pulling Dewey out on a stretcher. And she's all like, Dewey! And la la la. I'm like, hell yeah, Dewey made it. I thought Dewey might have been dead. I really did. But, he made it. And he must have been high. I don't know if he was on morphine or whatever they had him on. But she's like, are you okay? And he's like, yeah! And la da da da. He seemed high to me. But, nah. So, once again, Gale, Dewey, and Sidney, and Cotton, they all survived the events of Scream 2. And that is my review for 1997's Scream 2. I hope you guys enjoyed this video though, you know what I'm saying? Later on today, I will be reviewing Scream 3. which I said I might not be drinking this for. I might be wasted for that video, man. Oh, man. Oh, man. If that tells you anything. And then later on tonight, I will give you my review for Scream 4. And then tomorrow night, finally, I will get to see Scream 2022. And I will give you guys my spoiler-free review later on tomorrow night. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Until next time, guys, coming at you from ADiktion TV.